Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about how to start your career in reverse engineering and malware analysis. The growth of the whole cybersecurity industry has been so fast that you can see many different positions nowadays. If used to be just a virus analyst or reverse engineer, now you have threat analyst, threat hunter, security incident response, malware analysis, malware research, security engineer. And I figure it's pretty difficult for newcomers to the industry to actually understand what the hell is the difference. It's all about security. It all kind of requires similar skill. So today we're gonna quickly discuss what is the difference and what are the few options of how you can enter cybersecurity industry and what type of companies you can join in the beginning of your career and what would it mean for you if you're joining that type of companies. Let's say you have about a year of experience of reverse engineering and malware analysis. Or maybe you don't have reverse engineering experience at all, but you're reading the blog posts about how to reverse engineer, you're playing some CTFs, where you maybe, reverse engineer a little bit, you kind of understand how to use common tools like IDOPRO and Hexray. It kind of becomes, relatively easy to reverse engineer a simple CTF task because it's pretty much a source code, right? You're looking at the source code, using a decompiler, and you can do a thing or two. Right, and now you're like, okay, I'm so excited about this industry. I really want to become a cybersecurity professional. What can I do? Right, maybe you also get a bachelor in cybersecurity, so you know some fundamentals about computer system, operating system, and so on, and you pick the cybersecurity as your field. So you have a few options. The one option is a security vendor company, and the type of a company it is the one which builds the security product, right? It can be antivirus, endpoint detection and response, or network and detection and response, or XDR, can be next generation firewall, right? Different products. The most important part about it is the company builds and sells the product. So it's not a service, it's very important to emphasize, it's a product. And this company also sells this product to many customers, which you can also say companies. You can go to the consumer market. For example, there are companies like Avast, Norton, who targeting specifically a retail and consumer markets, and their customers are just our home users, right? As you and me, and that could be also a customer. But most of the security companies now, they target enterprise companies as their customers. The most important part of the security vendor is it builds the product to sell it to different customers. Right? And as a result, it can be different models. It can be a proprietary license, or it can be, as it's very popular nowadays, as a service. It doesn't really matter, because the way company operates is that it releases a new version of the product and updates it. Can be every 2 weeks, or can be every few months, or can be once a year. And it sells it to many different customers who installs it and use it. The malware analysts, reverse engineers in that security vendor company, they don't really work for the customers. They, for example, don't investigate incidents that happen on the customer side. They don't monitor customer systems really. The only thing they really care about is how to make the product as best as possible. That, of course, affects the type of work you're going to do for the security vendor. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later. So let's discuss what other options you have. The second option, right, is to go and work for the company. And the company can be, it can be a hospital or bank. It can be a police department or school or university. All this important is that what you're going to do there is you're going to protect the company. So you don't have many customers and you don't building any product. Your main goal is to protect the company you are in, and you only have one customer, right? It's your company. And you can be just a threat researcher there. It can be threat intel for this company, right? It can be a malware analyst for this company, or you can even join the SOC, right? So it can be just a few of you, like, a few individuals who, if a company is small, it cannot afford the whole SOC. It's going to be just maybe 1 or 2 threat researchers or malware analysts who will investigate and alerts, investigate suspicious attachments, or will do a bunch of other things, or write reports about that to the company you protect, right? Because the company is what's most important for you. You're not building any product, you don't sell this product to anyone. Your main goal is to keep operation of the company secure, and for this you performing certain duties, either as a part of SOC or the part of the smaller group who protects the customer. Third option is, of course, as I mentioned, many companies cannot actually afford to have their own security team, right? It definitely cannot afford to have the SOC. And what they do is they use services which called MSSP. It's a managed security service provider, or it can also be MDR, that's managed detection and response. You can hear also VSOC, that's virtual SOC, right? And the whole point of all of these companies is that they provide a service. You don't protect your company in this company, right? You're protecting someone else's company. A very important thing, they have many customers as well. They target the similar customers what security vendors do, right? They target companies. It's like the clients who cannot afford or don't want to have their own security team, and that's why they need to buy a security product, but they also have to hire people to actually manage the security product. And if you look at this from a history perspective, right, the reason I pointed 1, 2, 3 is because it also aligns the same way in the history. The first were security vendors. In 90s and 2000s, you had first antiviruses, then you had first IDS systems, first gateways. Back in the day, it was a common thing to just buy a security product, install it, and kind of forget it, right? And assume that the security vendor builds the product good enough, which protects you from being hacked or being attacked by malware. Over time, everyone understood that that's not a feasible approach. Companies get hacked, and so that's why companies who can afford it, biggest companies, start to build their own small teams, and then the whole SOC, which could be multiple teams to protect the company. In this case, SOC would actually buy a product from security vendor, install it, set it up, and then monitor it and make sure that company is not compromised, right? And that these teams also required malware analysts and security researchers in them. Of course, not every company can afford it, and also there's just not. Imagine how many companies exist and how many threat researcher and malware analysts you have available to hire. It just would be never enough people for every company to hire their own security team, and that's why we got that third option, where some company would provide a service, security services, for many different customers, for many different companies, to protect them against the threat. In this case, company might be responsible to buy security vendor products, or their product can be recommended by a service provider, and then company installs the product, and then the service provider, security service provider, would actually monitor, manage, and respond to that product. And for example, when you're talking about the incident response, right, digital forensic, that services can do it as well, and investigate what actually happened. So if you're looking at this, there's at least 3 types of different companies you can join. And I think it's very important to understand the difference, because difference can affect drastically your career. And that's what we're going to talk about next slide. So let's see how your choice of the type of the company you're joining can affect your career in the best and the worst case scenarios. For example, you picked a security vendor. It could be a next generation antivirus, can be just antivirus, can be EDR, can be MDR. The idea is that the company which builds a security product. And if it's a good company, you can be joining one of the most sophisticated and advanced group of experts who is building that type of products for maybe 10, 15, 20 years. And you have tons of things learned from them. So your best case scenario is you hire in that team, And for example, you first have some basic skill set of reverse engineering, but the main goal, the reason the company hired you, is that you analyze malware and threats and reverse engineer pretty much every day to understand why this product missing something, what needs to be improved. If the product is mature enough, it might be a very exciting place to work, because you're going to be analyzing the most advanced malware which product don't detect yet. If the company has a lot of clients, it means you will have a very good visibility into malicious landscape. Again, the product is mature, you have good visibility. You're going to be seeing in reverse engineering and looking at one of the most sophisticated, interesting malware, probably going to change, maybe not every day, but week to week, month to month, you're going to be able to analyze different type of malware. And it's really best case scenario. You learn a lot, you next to a group of experts who are in the industry for 15, 20 years, and you're reversing a great samples and learn a lot. Your worst case scenario, and I don't have anything against shift work, I think it's very important, but you have to understand that when you join company on a shift, and that's happened usually if you're very junior, that's where even security vendor would hire you to shift work. And what it means is you're going to analyze tickets from customers to understand, is it false positive or a miss. So usually a customer, even though vendors don't actually investigate the customer's network and incidents, when customers do have an incident and vendor's product didn't detect it, of course customer get upset and create a ticket and say, hey, why didn't you detect it? We thought you were best. And usually the shift analysts are the people who, after support done all the work and understand, okay, it's not a product broken, it's really we missed the sample. The shift analyst can be this next line. And that doesn't mean that shift work is actually bad. Actually, in the beginning of the career, shift work may be amazing, because in the beginning of your career, you really need a lot of experience, not necessarily some in-depth analysis of like one sample for 3 months, but instead you need a lot of samples. You need to acquire the knowledge and expertise, and you need to see as many malicious samples as possible. And it's a shift work is actually could be very good for your career, especially for first 1-2 years. The problem though is that if by some reason that product misses a certain type of malware, and while developers trying to figure out how to fix it, every single day you're going to have the same type of malware. Or, for example, same type of false positives. And that would be just annoying, right? Because after 2 or 3 weeks, you're just going to be like seeing the same, let's say, emotet. You'll say the security product doesn't detect emotet well. And every week you're just creating signatures or some sort of detection for that emotet because the product doesn't detect it well, and you just need to respond something to customer. And that can be very burning out type of work, because you're not learning anything new, right? You've seen that malware so many times already that by opening it one more time in IDA or hex editor, you're not learning anything. So that kind of worst case, like a worst side of this security vendor work. And that's why if you're joining the shift work, to make sure you're not burning out and you actually learn, you need to explicitly talk to your manager and say, hey, what's going to be opportunity for me to learn? If that's really a shift where I'm going to be looking at the false positive and some same misses all the time, can I spend, let's say, 4 hours a week or 1 day a week actually taking some interesting sample and reverse engineer it, or work with a threat detection team to improve the system somehow and come up with some ideas or build some prototypes instead of just working on a shift, right? You kind of need to mix and match, especially after a year or 2 on a shift. You really need to start looking, because otherwise you're going to burn out, and you also, because the work is all repetitive, you're not going to learn anything. For the company, what could be the best for you to work for the company? And option number 2, right? Well, it can, if it's a big company with a lot of resources invested in it, you will have visibility in real attack. You're going to be, again, surrounded by great people, experts, and you're going to be day-to-day tracking what's going on with your network, looking at the new phishing campaigns, new malicious campaigns. Maybe you're going to even see like heads-on battle between your security team and some intruder in your network. And you're really going to see the real stuff going on. right? That's the best part of working in a company, if the company has a good resources and a good team. The bad side of it, the worst side of working in a company, is that if company is very under-resourced and don't have invest in good products. If that's the case, you might end up in a situation where you don't have visibility. Like company gets hacked all the time, either like you and another guy to blame or girl to blame, and you getting blamed all the time. And you don't actually have a product which would notify you about anything. So you're manually trying to track all the attacks and email attachments, but you don't actually see what's going on in your network. The network is not visible fully, and it's just a nightmare. Or you're receiving the same type of phishing attacks every week, or maybe your company is not under attack at all, and you're just receiving some generic phishing campaigns every week, and they're all the same, and you're just writing the same reports every day. You don't even have anything to reverse engineer, either because you don't have visibility of what's going on in the network, or because nothing is going on in your network, right? And for example, if you want to learn malware analysis and reverse engineering in that bad environment, you might end up learning nothing, because you just, a person to blame if something goes wrong, but in reality you don't have opportunity to learn anything. And that's the kind of like a bad side of the working in the company, who actually doesn't care about security that much. They just invested in it as little as possible to just have a checkbox that they have a security. And that exists, of course. So you have to be careful where you hire to. And the third thing is the service provider. Here, the opportunity could be even greater than in the second option, right? Visibility in real attacks in different environments. Every day there's going to be other company, or every week is going to be different company. You're investigating real stuff. If you, let's say, a threat intelligence person, or you, let's say, instant response or digital forensics, you going from company to company, going to incidents, and you learn what actual attack looks like, right? Because when you're working with security vendor, you're already removed from the first line of attack. Yes, you're observing what's going on in the industry, what kind of attacks happen, but you almost never have an opportunity to look at them as they happening. And as a security provider, that's what you do. The dark side of working with a security provider, you might never have opportunity to reverse engineer. And let's call it possible lack of opportunity, because it all depends what role you're going to be assigned to and what knowledge you have. There's so many customers that you have to look at all these reports and try to figure out, is it false positive, is it real attack, and so on. You might end up just analyzing logs of security products. So instead of like looking at the first-hand malware and how it works and performing malware research and threat research and reverse engineering, you're going to be looking at the logs, and the only thing you can learn is how to correlate the logs. And honestly, that's the probably job for AI, not for humans, but of course humans need to be involved to verify if the AI is correct or not in case of AI is involved, and that might be your job. So even though you are still learning and you kind of security researcher in this case, you're working with the second-hand data. And for some people it can be okay, and all the work is important. But if you're in the beginning of your career, and that's the danger, if you're in the beginning of your career and you don't really have malware analysis and reverse engineering experience yet, and you stick for long enough in that position when you just kind of launder through these logs and understanding the threats, and let's say you grow in your career, at some point you won't really have opportunity to learn how to reverse engineer malware and perform malware analysis, and at some point your salary is going to grow, and to jump back into reversing and malware research, you might need to take a salary hit. Right? Because you're going to be jumping, let's say, from mid position at some point after 2 years working that to a junior position again. And while now you're going to have a good security awareness of how attacks happen, you will know some threat intelligence, maybe threat hunting techniques. If you decide to go and work for security vendor to build a product and being involved in that, you might not necessarily have enough skill, again, because you're working with the second-hand data. You're looking at the logs of the product which detects something. You might be seeing only things which those products seeing. Your kind of reality is distorted of how attacks happen by the products you're working with. So when you switch the product, you might be like, oh damn, why we don't see this, why we don't see that, because you're using a different product, right? Your career becomes a little bit dependent on products you know how to work with. But in general, I would recommend to be very cautious if you're joining a security provider and you're joining the opportunity where you just go and going through incidents, day in and day out. Make sure that your team is qualified enough and the company is invested into growing the talent. Otherwise, you might end up in that position, and after 2 years, after a few months, you're going to learn something, and after 2 years, you pretty much going to be the same learning curve as after a few months, because you would know how to understand the logs really well, but that's pretty much it. You would not really learn how to reverse engineer or analyze malware, how malware works inside. So be aware of that. Another thing you have to be aware when you're joining any type of company. Some companies can be more affected by that and some less, but it's in general a structure of the security team. If you're joining the company, let's say you're joining a security provider, and you can have like a pretty big team, maybe 15 people and all that stuff, right? But they all junior, and if you look at the structure of the team, there is maybe 1 or 2 senior people here, maybe 3, right? And then the manager. Think about how, and let's say you're here, right? That's you. How are you going to grow in a company like this? Because let's say you have like 15 people who are junior with the similar experience as you. You're looking at the LinkedIn and you see that these 3 guys or girls looking at the company for like 5 years, and that they join as the seniors and they're seniors, and you don't see anyone promoted to seniors. And the only thing you see is people quitting after 2 years, something like this, to search for another company. And let's say that's why you join, right? You join because someone's quit after 2 years. Be aware of such environments, because sometimes the reason it's happening is not because company is horrible and they don't want to support you and stuff like that. It's simply because the company allocated the resources for 3 seniors and 15 juniors. And that's amount of resources that department got allocated by a business department. That's just how they run. There is no real opportunity to grow unless someone in the senior position will quit, which can take years to happen. There's just no room to grow, right? So when you join companies like this with the structure like that, where you have a lot of junior people and you have kind of very high turnover, and there's only a few senior people and like a manager, be aware. Ask the manager, hey, what's the opportunity to grow? Try to get the real answer. And if you see there is none, that might be okay. Just be aware that you might be there for 1 or 2 years, and you need to learn enough skills and experience, get enough experience to jump to the next company after a few years if there is no opportunity, right? But it's usually very easy to spot the structures like that. You kind of see that, that coming. Just be aware of it. Just don't sit in your company and say, oh yeah, sometimes they're going to promote me because, it's a good thing. I'm a good worker. They're going to promote me because I'm good, right? It's not necessarily, people not promoted because they're good workers or because they're learning skills. They also need opportunity to be promoted. They need that rec to be allocated with the salary they're going to receive if they promote it. And if the company doesn't have that allocation, you're not going to be promoted, right? What you're ideally looking for is more like a pyramid structure, right? Where you have like a few super senior, a few, middle level, few juniors, and there's a clear path of how to go from here to here, right? And the company, maybe some people stay here for 3-4 years, and you already know a couple of guys or girls, let's say here, and you look at their LinkedIn and oh, they were actually promoted from junior positions and they work in the company for 3-4 years and they were promoted, and there's a clear opportunity to either become a developer or learn how to become senior threat intel guy, girl, or so on, right? So if you see that structure of the team clearly have promotion opportunities and the structure and you see people who got promoted inside, it's a good sign. It means you can grow in that company. And usually it has this pyramid structure, right, where there's not too many juniors, not too many seniors, or too little seniors. You have very balanced team which kind of naturally grows. That's, in my opinion, the ideal environment to grow if you're joining. Okay, I hope that video was useful for you, and now you have a little bit more understanding of what kind of companies exist in cybersecurity, what's the difference between joining those companies, also what your kind of best worst case scenarios by joining those companies, and what to be aware of kind of traps in your career you don't want to be, and also what to be on lookout when you're looking at the teams you're joining. What kind of structures to be look out. Again, the shift work is not necessarily bad by no means. Sometimes I've been on a shift myself for some time when I just joined my first company, and I think that's a great opportunity to grow. But you need to see this opportunity, because if you're looking at the company and you look at who was promoted from that shift, and you don't see anyone, or maybe like one person in the last 5 years, and you see clearly people coming and leaving, it means there is no opportunity for growth. Even if you work hard, you might like that. That's the biggest misconception in people who just join the industry. They think if they good workers, they work hard, they're going to be promoted. That's not the case. I mean, it's ideal case, but it's not always the case, because sometimes company might just not have opportunities for you to be promoted. And your manager may be very open about this and just say, yeah, that's what the thing is, right? But very often they will be like, yeah, sure, just work hard and you're going to be promoted, and you work, and you end up not really being promoted, and then wasting your career time there, and then just need to change the company anyway. So be aware of that situation. That does happen in the industry.